Welcome to CoozaCast, where we interview some of the most influential people in tourism from around the world. My name is Graham Watson, and I'm the founder of Cooza Global. The word Cooza means a new dawn, and in 2023, we want to find out just how our guests are working towards that new dawn. Join us and subscribe to future episodes as we hope to inspire you with stories of strength and resilience in the tourism industry. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of CoozaCast. Today, our guest is Julie Cheetham. She's one of the founding members and managing director at Weeva. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Graham. So lovely to be here and to be able to chat with you today.
Oh, great. Thanks for coming along. We met in London a couple of weeks ago at a wonderful function that you hosted for the travel industry to just talk a bit more about Weeva and do some brainstorming. So just for the listeners, the way we generally start off is just a run through of who you are and what you've been up to in the tourism industry over the years. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
That sounds great. Great, thanks. I've been working on Weeva for about the last 2.5 years, and I'm excited to tell you more about that and how it all started. Prior to that, I'm actually a banker and was in financial services for just under 15 years and was always in big transformation projects. And the principles are very much the same. How do you improve a business? And when you're improving that business, how do you look at supply chains? How do you look at people? How do you look at profitability? How do you look at securing your resources in the environment? So similar themes that kind of led me through a management consulting path into tourism. So tourism wasn't my first career. I've had to learn all about it over the last 10 years. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some amazing properties on my learning curve.
Oh, that's great. So a lot of people said that they never really started out in tourism. They just got kind of led into it by passion and by people just realizing the importance of it. You do a very important role in tourism, or you are part of the sustainability team that drives the eco-friendly and sustainable tourism. So just tell us what Weeva is and what you are hoping to accomplish. Just go back to when it was founded and just a bit about that.
Sure. So Weeva was founded during the COVID pandemic. It was one of the good things to come out of COVID.
Yes.
Around about April 2020, one of my clients at the time called me and asked if I would be part of a think tank of how could we help this tourism industry that we all love, be more resilient and future-proof it. And so we got together thought leaders from all around the world, whether it be from the Long Run, Preferred by Nature, Cambridge University's Institute of Sustainability Leadership, ILO and human rights and labor thinkers, carbon thinkers, and we kind of looked at this conundrum. It wasn't just COVID and coming back stronger. It was so many things where the tourism industry was kind of on the back foot, whether it was the biodiversity crisis or decolonizing the sector or ownership and management rights and inclusion, First Nations ownership, LGBTQ plus travel, just so many things, greenwashing. And so this eventually led us to a good old balanced scorecard approach to future-proofing your business. Look at the commercials and make sure you're looking at, the community or people stuff, the environmental and nature stuff, as well as the cultural stuff, because all of those are systemic and you can't extricate them. And so we built out Weeva to be this balanced scorecard framework. And we realized that to really make it global and accessible to every tourism business, to help them to future-proof, it had to be digital. And so to digitize, we had to make sure that every single positive and negative impact could be measured and understood. And so that's what we've built with Weeva. We've built a digital sustainability system that is online, that is affordable and accessible. You can take the steps by yourself. You don't need an expensive consultant. And we're there to hold your hand, to help you to improve each area of your business and to use data and facts to monitor that progress and report on it as you go. So we're trying to move away from sort of the idealism and the pledges, because there's this big intent and action gap, and trying to provide accessible tools to help people to actually move along that sustainability journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed by the dashboards of Weeva and how, inputting the data shows you in an infographic kind of format where your business is in terms of, and and the nice thing about it is, as you said, there's so many aspects to a business that should, a 2023 business, where it comes to community development. There's so many different aspects. Maybe just run us through the four different kind of pillars that you guys use as well, because that really was interesting to me.
So we've used a balanced model that we call the 4 C's. We've borrowed this 4 C's from an organization called The Long Run, who are one of the premier certifications for sustainable tourism in nature-based tourism. And we looked, far and wide, and they align with the Sustainable Development Goals, with the GSTC framework for sustainable tourism, with the WTTC hotels framework. And so we took those 4 C's of commerce, conservation, community, and culture. But then we dug deeper, and we've identified 18 areas of any business that are measurable. So we look at everything from your typical waste, energy, and water in, your conservation area. But for nature-based properties, we help you to also unpack your biodiversity, your species lists. How do you protect nature? We have a module on embodied carbon for those who want to do new builds or renovations. We can never overlook the commercials, because commercial success is what will ultimately help us to keep our sector successful and enduring. We want the commercial success. We just want it to be done in a way that's balanced, that's never extractive or exploitative, and that shares that value. So commercials, there's so many important things to monitor. Our customer satisfaction, your guest surveys, what are they telling us? So we run analytics on your customer satisfaction surveys to see how you can improve. What can you learn? Let's look at your supply chain analytics to see how local and sustainable really is your supply chain, and where can you make the biggest, most impactful changes? How do we look at risks for your business? Forward planning. Got a lovely module called Weevanomics that helps you to break down your spend, so you can see, are you spending across your whole business in a balanced way, to make sure that you are future-proofing and you're not spending only on one part of your business and neglecting the rest. In community, we look at your internal community, so your employees, with ethical and inclusive labor practices. Is everyone taken care of, from remuneration to health and safety, learning and development, diversity and inclusion? And what do your employees have to say about that? What's their lived experience? As well as externally, the neighborhoods and communities in which your hotel or your lodge is based, how are we making a positive impact there? We track and monitor all your community impact projects, as well as in the conservation area, your nature-based and conservation projects. And then lastly, culture. How do we protect culture that is around us? How are we contributing to preservation? How are we making sure we're not over-visiting cultural sites? And even contemporary culture, when we celebrate that in our hotels, how are we making sure there's no cultural misappropriation? So there's great tools and leveling up guides to help you to monitor this and to track your progress as you go.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a well-balanced approach, because I think a lot of people, when they hear the term sustainability, they immediately think of climate change only. They don't necessarily think of culture and community as well in terms of that sustainable tourism. And that's one of the main things. I love the way Weeva brings the human aspect into a sustainable business model. Because like I say, I think people get a bit overwhelmed with the steps that they may need to take in terms of protecting the environment, but there's also steps that they need to take to protect the culture and their community and their staff as well. So I love
Absolutely.
I love the way your system can show people that. So you've worked you've worked with a number of different properties and businesses that we in the tourism industry would know, such as Grootbos and Swalu, Fireblade Aviation. What is the and so you obviously you've worked in many different in businesses. What do you think is the key challenge that a business would face into becoming more sustainable? And what is Weeva doing to help them? I know you've run through a bit, but what do you think could be, what in your mind is the key challenge?
I think that, the key challenge is resourcing. I think most businesses just don't know where to start. And if they do want to start, they don't have the money or the time to have a dedicated person to look at this. It's also very complex and complicated. And so even if somebody is assigned to think about how we could become a more balanced business, the minute they start to Google these things, it becomes so intimidating that they just kind of give up.
Yeah,
and so
that's
I think,
true.
That's the first challenge. And so Weeva's tried to address that by making it very much choose your own adventure. You can just work on, the climate crisis by looking at your carbon footprint. And over time, you can add water and people and culture and all the other bits. Or if you're slightly more mature, you might want to start with 5 or 6 things. I think it would probably take a property a good number of years to be monitoring their entire business and, doing really well across their whole business. I think another big challenge is that changing your business model is really intimidating and really scary. But if you think of other industries, whether it's sugar supply chains, fashion and textiles, petroleum, oil and gas, we've had to look at the way we work across every industry in the world and start to get very real about those impacts. And the effects of climate change affect those marginalized communities that generally work in and around our hotels and lodges the most, and continue to put them even in more pressured situations and more at risk. And so to really, I think, keep it real and look at all the stakeholders, including nature, but also at our commercial success, that's a really difficult strategic position to change to if you haven't been used to it. And so Weeva's hoping to just offer a different way of thinking and a simple frame to help you to do better without being too intimidating.
Yeah, no, it was a very friendly, or is a very friendly platform, and Weeva.earth is the website, but I'll put it all in the descriptions for everybody to have a look at later. So as we approach all the 3-year milestones of COVID and what it did to all of us professionally and personally, what do you think has taught you about the tourism industry? You were in it. You also, such as myself, formed a business during the pandemic. What do you think it has taught you about the tourism industry?
Graham, I think that what it's taught me is that travelers and travel companies need to become more conscious of the decisions that they're making, right, in order to almost future-proof themselves, because who knows what the next COVID will be.
Yeah.
And I think also that travelers are becoming more conscious, and so are businesses, of doing the right thing and choosing travel that has a positive impact. So this is quickly becoming a compliance issue. You'll see a lot of countries around the world now starting to do things like ban single-use plastics. I mean, that's an old one, but actually requiring reporting on energy usage and carbon footprint and waste reporting. And so we've also seen things like limiting human and animal interaction. The governments are becoming more involved. So I don't think tourism is going to have a choice for much longer as to running their businesses in an ethical way. I think we need to be on the front foot and not get caught up in any poor behaviors, like greenwashing or doing anything exploitative. And so I think that's the biggest mindset change for me during COVID. Before, as a consultant that was specializing in sustainability in the tourism industry for about 10 years before COVID, it was very much the more mature properties who were already keen on doing the right thing that would kind of engage these kind of services. Whereas since COVID, I think everybody is more aware of this. And so whether it's your trade, your tour operators and your agents, your properties, your travelers, the conversation has moved into the mainstream. And there was actually a report released last week by McKinsey and Nielsen, and it said that over 60% of consumers will actually pay more and care about buying environmentally and ethically sustainable products. And so for years, we've known in tourism that people would like to make better choices, but they won't necessarily pay more for that.
Yeah.
And so this McKinsey report shows us that people are starting to vote with their wallets now. They will actually start to make different consumer decisions. And so I think those are really the main paradigm shifts for me coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I agree, because even myself, my business cards are made out of flower seeds, so people can plant them when they finish taking the details down. So also the same. The first thing I notice now when I go to a conference or anything is the water in plastic bottles or in glass bottles. And sadly, there does seem to be a lot of tourism or functions and events that still have plastic water bottles on all the tables. So I think it's definitely something that we're all noticing, something that we're willing to pay more for, as you say. Definitely, I think it's one of those things that we all just need to realize we all just do our bit. Obviously, we don't want to be ripped off, and as you say, the greenwashing and someone charging us a premium when there isn't really much value. People just stick a leaf on it and claim it's environmentally friendly. There is a lot of, and I think the traveler is becoming more aware of that as well. If they are particularly looking for products or experiences that have that are focused on sustainable and ecotourism in all forms, as you say, with community as well, having a fully rounded kind of Weeva seal of approval in a way. I've had discussions on the podcast with LGBTQ travelers as well, and there's very much, just because you stick a rainbow flag on your door doesn't mean that you're LGBTQ friendly. So there is
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, I mean, there is that kind of there is that kind of stuff as well that people are kind of seeing through, the greenwashing and the pink washing and all of that
rainbow
kind of stuff.
washing. There's all sorts of washing happening.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So for the listeners who aren't really in tune with what pink and green and washing is, it really just means when you're trying to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes in terms of you're trying to just wash really what you're doing and not really focus too much on it. Yeah, so that's happening a lot, but I think a lot of people are seeing through it. So with Weeva, as I think if there are regular listeners, and I know there are by the numbers that I'm looking at for the podcast, they know me as a techno geek. I love all my tech, and Weeva is a great product. It's visually stunning, visually easy to read. What are other work tools that you use to help you be a bit more productive in the workday, in our very busy work days? Thank goodness.
So I think just on a sustainability note, in my individual life, I'm always just challenging myself to do better. So for me, that was last year. I challenged myself not to buy any clothing for 6 months of the year. And when you are, working in business and you're in an office and you're presenting in board meetings and at webinars and conferences, you do want to look your best. So I think that was a real journey for me to find out more about sustainable fashion. We're eating a lot less meat in our house. We're more veg forward than we used to be. So in my personal life, I use podcasts and the communities of practice that I'm in on LinkedIn to really follow latest information and keep myself up to date. And then in terms of my time management, I really love time blocking. So in my calendar, I designate blocks of time to different activities. Whether that might be one-on-one team interactions with members of my team for one-on-one time, or workshopping time, or concentrated work time where I have to put my head down, or webinars, even things like exercise and travel. And each of those has got a different color. So I can see at a glance for a week how balanced my week kind of is.
Wow.
And I try to kind of at the start of every week think, am I looking at stuff for this week, this month, this quarter, and this year? So that I don't get caught with a train coming towards me because I'd forgotten that something was due, like budgets in August, or whatever the thing.
Yeah.
So time blocking really works for me. One of those blocks is Friday afternoons. I try to keep clear to follow my reading, my communities of practice, all the articles, all the podcasts, so that I can keep learning, because there's just so much to learn in this space and it's changing so quickly. ESG disclosures. So I think that's what works for me, is trying to be a bit structured.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, for me, it's I think the old idea of you're only working if you're sitting at a computer typing away is not necessarily true, or not true at all, really, because there are so much. I mean, we are working now. It doesn't feel like it. We're having a great chat, but I mean, it's work, and that's what I think a lot of people need to understand, that reading articles on LinkedIn and interacting and collaborating and sharing on LinkedIn and other platforms. There's a great travel industry platform called Hablo that I'm active on, and there are. I mean, there's just so much to do, and I think people tend to feel, I'm on Facebook or I'm on Instagram. But if you're running your own business, you need to be on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. It's just one of those things. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I tend to do. I'm getting, writing articles, not just reading articles, but writing articles as well, to kind of share the knowledge. I'm all about sharing and helping everybody kind of rise up, because I think that I think what COVID did teach us is that even though we are competing, well, not you and I, but I mean, generally we are competing in businesses, it doesn't mean that we need to keep all the knowledge to ourselves. And I think that sharing is caring, the old
absolutely,
the old Barney saying, I think it is, isn't it? From childhood, those things generally carry through to adult life, and that's what I try and do as well. Just generate content and just be out there and help as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I think for me, for years I thought I won't create content and put it out there because I don't have a PhD in sustainability or a PhD in tourism. But what's become really apparent to me over sort of the last 10 years is that myself and other sustainability practitioners or lodge managers or head of housekeeping or maintenance managers, we've got unique perspectives on the practical application of all of these things. And so the more that we can create content with the intention of sharing it with one another to make it easier, this learning journey, kind of co-competition, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to have a better industry. We've still got our unique selling points for our particular lodge or our particular travel operating business. But the more we can share and learn, it just cuts down that learning curve and that duplication of effort. So I agree, really encouraging people to share their own practical experiences. Even if you're not an academic, you still have a valid voice.
Yeah, there's so many things that can be learned and taught, and obviously intellectual property is one thing, but I think that, I really do. I am encouraged by the sharing that I'm seeing, and it wasn't around. Well, maybe I wasn't running my own business before and I never noticed it, but it didn't seem to be around prior to COVID. I think it taught people a lot of humility, and that's what has the last 3 years taught you about yourself, do you think? Because I've spoken many times, and guests have really been great in sharing what it's taught them about themselves as human beings. What do you think the pandemic taught you about yourself?
Sure, I think my passion has always been finding better ways of doing things, doing things better. And I am a little bit of a bleeding heart liberal, human rights passionate. So the opportunity to do this on a global scale has really come with Weeva, and that has been such a privilege and so exciting. But it's been a very steep learning curve. So it's taught me, that I'm very resilient, much more than I might have thought initially on a personal level. And it's also taught me that we can learn so much from mistakes. Our first version of Weeva, we outsourced to a very big international tech partner, and we absolutely hated it. And that was at the end of 2021, and we binned it. And that was a really tough decision to take, to go to our board and say, and our funders and say, guys, this hasn't worked out the way we wanted it to. And then we decided to pull the development of Weeva in-house at the start of 2022, last year. And we nurtured and built talent internally and, grew Weeva step by step to get to where we could launch it in October last year. And we're thrilled with the result. But that taught me and the team a lot of good lessons about failing forward and rather do something and test it quickly than go and, absolutely gold plate it and then put it out there and realize that it's not going to work. Yeah. So we've learned how to do things iteratively and how to make quick decisions. And that were a lot tougher than we thought, We've been through some tough times in the last 3 years and we're still there.
Some tough times, geez.
Well, and that's the
More
other
than
thing.
Some, yeah.
As a leader, Graham, and I'm sure you felt this as well, as a leader of people, and I've been in leadership roles for 20 years now. Yeah. The last 3 years has changed my leadership point of view. People are struggling.
Yeah. People
have gone through such uncertain times. They're overwhelmed. They are almost like burnt out and exhausted, and they're doing their best. And it's changed the conversations we have to have. Like, I've got to know how the team is doing all the time. And I'm sure this will eventually translate to our customers and our users as well, and our other partners. But for me right now, to focus on the team and how you lead people through such hectic and crazy times and still try to get them to push hard and get a new product to market and keep developing it and keep working, so hard. And it's had to change the way we have conversations. So we're always trying to understand respective positions. I can't just assume that I know what's going on in the team anymore. Which was easier prior to COVID. We kind of had patterns and we worked in certain ways, and with Weeva and building this new business through Weeva, the people aspect has probably been the biggest learning because people are not okay.
Yeah.
And so it's how do we support one another to still do great things?
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. As I've said on other episodes, it's, I don't want anybody to feel that there is this huge sort of resurgence and everyone's doing so well, and then you got people there that maybe aren't and thinking, what are they doing wrong? But that's not the case. It's there is a lot of hangover still, absolutely, from COVID. I mean, there are still COVID restrictions in the world, from what I understand. I mean, I think there are still COVID restrictions, whereas China is concerned, and I personally think that it taught people a lot of humility, and and it saddens me when I see that the kind of arrogance slipping back in to the way people behave around other people, because we had this huge lovely feeling of camaraderie, and the whole human race was in it together. I mean, there was so I hope that carries through, and then people realize that treat people with love and respect, because it's the way that we need to go forward. So what do you think still needs to change in the tourism industry to go forward? I mean, obviously, in terms of the four pillars at Weeva, there's so much room for improvement, but can you identify a few things?
I think that the climate crisis is undoubtedly our most pressing agenda. Like, we have to curb greenhouse gas emissions. So that is urgent and it's important. But with that, for me, I think what needs to really change is still the human rights emphasis. I think tourism is still an industry that doesn't share value well enough. Our ownership and management and control models need to change. We probably need to do a lot of soul searching around decolonizing our sector. And by that, I mean, look at who benefits from these activities,
Yeah.
where income is getting redistributed around the world, but it's not always landing up in the right places. And yeah, I think that we need to protect all our partners in tourism businesses. And that's not just our clients, that's also people who work for us and who work in our supply chain and in our local governments. And there's just, there's a lot. I think we can do a lot better for all of the people who actually live in the places that we visit.
Yeah.
And whether that's a city, whether that's Rio or New York City, or whether it's more rural safari experience in India or Africa or the Pantanal in Brazil, it's not to say that this is only about tribal indigenous places. This is, how do you make sure that people even in big cities aren't being exploited by tourism?
Yeah.
Like we saw the Airbnb crisis where nobody could rent a room close to their work anymore. Or, Hawaii, where everyday Hawaiians don't have access to water right now because the water restrictions are being applied to citizens and not to big hotels. We're not only thinking about, really rural places, we're thinking of every tourism experience around the world. And then I think the other thing that really still has to change is we can't think of sustainability as a luxury. Mass tourism, 3-star tourism, 2-star tourism, camping and glamping and hostels. We all need to do better. And tourism gets discussed in these like super luxury avenues. It's always a topic at like the big trade shows where you see all the super expensive properties. It has to be a conversation amongst the mainstream. And actually, often properties at the lower price range are better at sustainability. They're doing some amazing authentic experiences for their guests on a smaller scale and a less exploitative scale, just as a matter of course. And so I'd love to see the conversation be more broad and just more real than just kind of spoken about in the echelons of super luxury lodges, because that's where we tend to have those conversations. Well, in my perhaps limited networks, maybe it is happening on a much broader scale and I'm just not aware of it.
I mean, it's very true that the service provider is probably the one of the last people to get the chunk of the payment pie. The actual experience owner, the experience runner. And I mean, that opens the whole discussion on direct marketing and all that kind of stuff, trying to get the client directly rather than through traditional channels. And that's why I love the term that you've used, future proofing, because to think that with all the technology around now, that the traditional channels don't need to adapt. I think it's very important to adapt. And some of these people that are taking 35%, 40% to put something on a website is I think that kind of needs to be relooked at as well, because then it's going to drive people. And as we've seen in the tourism industry, it's driven B&Bs and smaller properties to drive that direct tourism. They don't want to work through the traditional channels anymore because they don't want to give away so much. I think we just need to find a happy medium where everybody has the value and shows it. So it's interesting times coming up. Absolutely. So I mean, anybody that's starting in the industry, there are a lot. I mean, I'm helping this week. I'm actually starting a mentorship with a lovely South African business that I'm going to be helping get on his feet in terms of marketing advice and getting a business plan and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very excited to be able to give back and help a small business. What advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out? It's a very it's a huge industry and a huge potential. So it could be overwhelming for somebody just starting out.
so exciting to hear that you're working with, some emerging businesses.
Yeah.
That's such a cool space to be able to help in. For me, I think it's probably just enjoy the ride, because it is the most wonderful and sort of life-affirming industry to be in.
Yeah.
You're with people at their best when they're on vacation, when they're happy and they're de-stressed, and
well, the majority of the time. Some people are at their worst.
Some people are at their worst.
Yeah.
It does brings out sometimes the worst behavior.
Yeah.
And we're helping to really preserve cultures that would otherwise disappear and conserve these critical areas of beauty and biodiversity and bring economic growth and redistribute income. So I think it's such an amazing industry to be part of. Would be the first thing I would say, that you've made a good choice to be part of this industry. And then make sure that you act with utmost integrity. Don't get sucked into false luxuries, because it is an industry that can quickly seduce you, I suppose. Yes. So make sure that you are following your compass and not getting involved in anything that might look a bit dodgy or exploitative or extractive. And just drink some nice champagne to cover it up. But find other forms of luxury, I'd say, like authentic experiences or real connections that aren't just like voyeuristic and consumptive in any way. So look for those true experiences of like peace and connection, and go off the beaten track, go out of season, go when things aren't so popular in a country. That's when they need your business to support them as a new tourism business. And then also network, because there's such amazing newsletters that you can subscribe to, communities of practice that you can subscribe to. There are free webinars that you can attend, online and virtual conferences. I think tourism is such a generous space. People are willing to meet you, to give you their contact details, to share their experience and their perspective with you. I found it to be such an open industry where people will teach you and help you. So I'd say really tap into that community of practice and that collegiality that we have in tourism.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Network. There's so many sayings. Your network is your net worth. That's one of my favorites. Because it's it's the people that I mean, it gives me such a great joy, and that's why with Kuza Connect, that's why I chose the word connect, because that's what I love doing. I've been at so many functions where people are just talking, and I'm like, oh well, that person over there can help you. Then I introduce, and it's that's what it's all about. It's it's great to be able to do that, and it's a very symbiotic relationship, the travel industry, and that's what I think a lot of people need to realize. Every person in the industry has a role to play, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and we all need to remember that without the experiences, if we're not looking after the experience providers, or then we've got nothing to sell. At the end of the day, the travel industry, we are just brokering other experiences, and if we're not providing them, of course. And I think it's important, and that's why I love attending these workshops with the actual experience provider, because that's what people want to experience. But it's a wonderful industry. Even in the last 3 years, we've all learned to pull together, and I'm glad to see all the shows coming back. Speaking about sustainability, and here we are talking about tens of thousands of people flying into conference venues, but it's all I mean, I think that's also going to change in a way, but anyway, the point is about the connection anyway. And ITB in Berlin is coming up. It's all onwards and upwards in the industry. And thanks so much, Julie, for joining me today and getting your take. So somebody that's interested, Weeva.earth is the website, and then what happens once they sign up?
So if you head to Weeva.earth, if you're a hotelier or a property owner, because this version of Weeva is for property, so hotels and lodges, you can sign up for a free trial and you can create your property profile on the system and just go for it. Dive in and start wherever you like. If you don't know where to start, I suggest climate action. That will help you with all of your energy bits and pieces and figure out your carbon footprint. And then the team's very excited. We've had such a huge interest from tour operators and, the trade. So we're working on an itinerary impact calculator version of Weeva. And that new product should be out early next year. So don't worry. We haven't forgotten you, rest of the value chain. We just started at the coal face.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I said to you when we met. That's what I would love to know. How even going for a meeting, what's the impact of that, and so yeah, it's all exciting times coming up, and good luck to you and your team.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job. Hopefully one day I'll fulfill my dream of having a B&B of myself and be able to use the Weeva technology for that.
Absolutely.
I hope I won't be a Basil Fawlty kind of owner, but I'm sure I'll have fun nonetheless.
I'm sure if you are, you'll attract some interesting clientele.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Everything has got a unique kind of look for the positive in everything, I suppose. But thanks, Julie, for your time, and it's great. I'll let you know when this goes out, and you can share it with your platform as well. And all the best. Lovely to meet you and have this chat.
Thanks, Graham, and thanks for the opportunity. So appreciative of a chance to chat about Weeva and share what we're up to. Lovely to meet you in London last week, and I look forward to keep the connection going. And please send through any questions or let me know, if there's anything else that we can share with you. So have a beautiful week.
You too, Julie. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into KuzaCast, where we explore the world of tourism with leaders from all corners of the globe. Join me, Graham Watson, for future episodes as we dive into the latest trends and insights from the industry. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating, and we'll see you next time on KuzaCast.